Hello, welcome back to my channel. Me? In the daylight? How crazy. First of all, I would just like to say a big thank you because the channel did hit 150 subscribers. Big milestone. Everybody clap. A few months ago, I made a video discussing the character designs for the Black Eagles house, specifically from Fire Emblem Three Hopes. I did touch on the Three Houses designs a little bit. I just like the Three Hopes designs a little bit more. So today, we're talking about my least favorite house. I said it. So brave. Just kidding. There's nothing wrong with them. Just of the three, they carry the least favor with me. If they're your favorite, I'm so sorry. Overall, all of the designs are really good. I don't really have a lot of negatives. I will be sharing my personal opinions as well as some historical references, real world fashion history that I've been able to find that kind of informs maybe why these designs are a certain way. Because costume design is cool and stuff, but it's even cooler when it informs your character, because it's a visual and quiet way of telling your story. In general, Fire Emblem games, and in particular Three Houses, pulls from a general medieval era ranging from like the 1400s, sometimes all the way up to like the 1900s, depending on how much they want to modernize the clothing. Similar to the Black Eagles and the Golden Deer, the Blue Lions largely stick to a similar color palette, the blue being the through line, obviously. It's also worth noting as well for generic class colors, the Blue Lions have the most members who wear blue when they're not in a specific character curated costume. So Dimitri, Felix, Annette, Ingrid, and Ashe, they all wear blue. Dedue wears brown, Sylvain wears black, and Mercedes wears white. So we're going to see blues and cool tones in general just as like a through line in terms of the color palette throughout all of these designs. Heavier fabrics and fur pelts are recurring through all of these designs, which I think just places a nice emphasis on the fact that all of these characters are from a northern climate and have to combat harsher winters. Another thing that I'm excited about is that last time I did this video for the Black Eagles, I used my own screenshots, but now concept art is available online in high quality scans. So today we're going to be looking at the concept art, which I think is a little bit more interesting just because those drawings do give us a little bit more information. First, we're going to start off with His Royal Highness himself. We're starting with Dimitri. Really great design. No notes. This is quite lovely. Obviously, this is a little bit more contemporary fantasy. It's just like a nice form-fitting armor. No particular historical reference. Also, just in general, I am not a fashion historian. This is more so I did a bunch of Googling and I'm presenting what I found. So if there are things that I don't know, sound off in the comments below. Dimitri, along with a lot of other members of the house, each carry typically their decorative swords, sometimes they're real. Being able to open carry a sword in public was typically a sign of nobility. I touch on it more specifically in my Black Eagles video, but obviously that design trend carries through with the Blue Lions as well. I think the first scarf is really nice. It's a variation on ermine fur, which is basically just a specific type of weasel. Ermine in history is usually white with black spots. Ermine use dates back as far as 1514. I like the dull navy kind of color that makes the armor look like a natural metal, but the tint emphasizes his status as the lead in the kingdom. He has a double cape in the back. These capes, if they were real fabric, they would probably be wool, and they're doubled up, likely for warmth. I also really like the asymmetrical elements, and by that I'm pointing to the slanted belts and the asymmetrical shoulder plates. I also appreciate the detail that the left side shoulder armor is bigger just because that's the aiming arm that you use when you're using a lance. I've never done that before, so that's a fun never have I ever. I think the waist belt adds a nice pop and takes us to that like Fire Emblem mercenary place that the franchise has been in post-Awakening. I don't like the chest strap as much. I just think it would be nice to see the lion, but I'm assuming the fact that the strap covers only one of the lion's eyes is a reference to Dimitri's post-time skip character design in Three Houses. I also just want to call attention to his promoted class design. The huge fur stoles just add another level of expense and luxury, as well as the cape with a fur trim. Maybe this could have used a fur trim. I also like the crest of Blathid being incorporated into the cape on the back. I think that could have been cool as well for his base design. Okay, next we're moving on to Dedue, his faithful right hand. If you look at the lost item descriptions from Three Houses, you can find a gold earring and their Dedues, and the item description says that they're of traditional Dusker descent, so obviously LOL, they're his because he's the only character from Dusker in the whole game. But I think it's nice that he has the earrings, that he has a matching brooch. I think there are some references to this kind of winged look throughout the design. The shoulder blades on his pauldrons both have wings on them. He also has a little wing design on both of his knee plates as well. I thought The slats throughout the design were also in reference to this, but it's a little bit harder to tell just because some of the other character designs do have similar slat work in them, although Dedue's armor does incorporate it the most specifically. I like this design a lot, especially compared to the other Blue Lions. I think there's a greater emphasis on armor in this one in order to give it the weight as opposed to the fabrics. A lot of the other designs are quite fabric heavy, as well as the red, yellow, and blue patterns on the scarf and the skirt kind of make him stand out a little bit more from the other members. I think the slat work and like the curved geometry overall to the design really just serves to emphasize Dedue having a different background. And there's also a lack of visible fur, and he is one of 2 designs that doesn't have any. Surprise, it's editor me. I also just noticed in 3 houses, Dedue is the only character that has that diagonal rectangular pattern. So it could be that they just brought that in for 3 hopes for some of the Blue Lions characters. I do think I'm right that this pattern is specific to Dedue, and it could subtly mean that the other characters are more accepting of him just because they're wearing a similar pattern. Who's to say? Felix's design is so fabulous. It's really, really good. It's like 18th century surcoat meets military jacket. I just feel like you look at this and you can tell right away that he's a military commander. It's the most military uniform of what we've seen so far, especially with how the jacket is from the waist up and the huge collar and the sleeves and the buttons, just all of it. Really, really nice. I think the length of the jacket and the side slits are meant to marry the Swordmaster class design elements with the military reference. I also love this kind of snowflake trim on the bottom of the surcoat, just a really pretty design. The cape is flawless. I like that it's fur lined at the bottom. The fur pelt around the neck is gorgeous. He's wearing a black high neck shirt underneath, and he has like a blue choker on that has diagonal slat work on it, which is reminiscent of what Dedue is wearing. Where the cape is affixed, the little metal clasp has the crest of Fraldarius on it, which I think is a really cool detail. It's pretty small, but I'm assuming most people wouldn't miss it just because it is pretty visible on his character portrait. The back of the cape is really nice. The crest of Fraldarius is on it again. Elements of the line work also pull from the Aegis shield, which is the item that's affiliated with the crest. It's just gorgeous. I love this design. The color combo, even though it's just blue on blue, it really works. The cuffs on the jacket are also really gorgeous. They just add a little bit more emphasis to the arms, which, you know, when you're playing a game, especially a fighting game, you want the eyes to be drawn there. So his white gloves and then the pop of color there, especially when you're looking at it from the front view, where it's nicely silhouetted by the navy lining of the cape. It just makes me really happy. Moving on to Annette. This is one of the designs that made me really excited that I was looking at concept art and not just at what you can see from just playing the game. Because, like, for example, how many people knew that she was wearing pants? Also, the fact that they make note of her having this, like, diamond cutout on the chest because the dress that she's wearing versus the top are 2 separate pieces. It's just cool the amount of thought that went into this design. So I think what's going on here is that she's wearing like a full one-piece kind of suit underneath, and then there's a dress on top. If this was a real article of clothing, these drawings would indicate to me that she's wearing one piece underneath and not a separate bottom and top. Just because based on this drawing, the shirt has to tuck in the back. Otherwise, again, if this was a real wearable garment, you would have lifting and then you wouldn't get really the shape that you want. I'm assuming both of these items are made out of wool. The wool leggings, obviously for warmth, pretty no-brainer. The top, just because of the way that it crinkles and sits, it looks a little bit more like a poplin or a muslin, like a different type of cotton. But there are archival pieces that have survived that are made out of wool that do have a leg of mutton sleeve. They just don't sit as nicely as the one that Annette is wearing, which is why I'd assume it's a lighter fabric. Moving on to the dress. In my mind, this dress is leather. It's probably not. I just imagine white leather would look the best. And it's just like a gorgeous, strapless corset dress, basically. Which, again, really cool that we're looking at the concept art because normally you wouldn't be able to see that it has lacing in the back. So it creates a really nice shape, especially because it's white. The shape is further emphasized by the negative space created by the capelet because it's lined with dark blue. And shape and volume are both added with the orange paneling on the side of the dress. because without the orange paneling, it just looks like a fitted dress. But the way that it's incorporated, obviously it bells the dress out a little bit more, makes it easier for Annette to run around on the battlefield. And the way that the blue bows are placed also make the color blocking an easier transition, I feel. I just think it's gorgeous and really well done. And then like the ruffle at the bottom. Trim is used throughout history just as a show of wealth because the garment becomes more expensive. It would take longer to make. It's more ornate, etc., etc. So little bows, the ruffle around the bottom, the fur lining the cape completely. All of these things contribute to signs of wealth. I like the palette here of the white is nice, the blue ties us into the house, and then the orange adds a pop of color that makes it stand out and a little bit more unique, especially among a bunch of other blue designs. I also think they chose orange specifically to match her hair. They do that throughout a few more of these designs as well. The gloves are really cute. I don't like the boots, specifically just because they don't look as good color blocked. This really gorgeous capelet. I do think this design makes Annette look like a nurse, specifically because it's white and the way that her bonnet is at the top, it just looks so much like a nurse's cap. I also appreciate the crest of Dominic is used throughout this design just in little pins. So it's on her neck, it's on her shoulders, and it's on the cap twice. Her and Felix, I think, are tied for my favorite designs, just with how much detail is in them. We're moving on to Sylvain. I like this design a lot. I just don't think we have a lot to talk about. Kind of similar design philosophy to Dimitri. I like that his armor is this black or like really dark charcoal kind of color. Sylvain and Dedue's designs both do kind of similar things where it's a more neutral armor color, and then specifically in the underwear kind of area, that's where they have the pop of color, and then they also both wear scarves. Sylvain's notably is the only other design among the Blue Lion House that does not have any fur anywhere, which his design in Three Houses actually does because he has like a waist wrap that's blue and then it's fur lined in a couple spots around it. Honestly, I think that actually might have been really nice here. I just feel like Dedue should be the only person who doesn't have fur. I'm a little upset that Sylvain also doesn't. I like the pop of red with the belt. Again, it's to match his hair, I'm pretty sure. They focus on the tassel. I'm not 100% sure why. Maybe just to add a little bit of flair. And then I appreciate the detail that he's wearing the same pauldrons as his father. I think he's also missing a decorative sword, especially because he has these waist straps, because then the three people who are closest to Dimitri all have these swords. Especially because Sylvain's arc in Three Hopes is basically just contradicting who he is in Three Houses, because he's like, I need to start taking things more seriously. And that's his whole deal. I think just more emphasis on knighthood and status would serve as a visual means of showing us that growth arc that he wants to be taken more seriously. I don't know. This design doesn't do much for me. Aesthetically, I think it's nice, but I don't think it tells us too much about Sylvain. Moving on to Ingrid. I love the silhouette of this, but I do not like the color combo. When you're playing the actual game, it does wash out the colors quite a lot, so obviously they're not as saturated as this. So the fact that she's wearing baby blue and teal and turquoise is much less stark, but I just don't like that color combo. I wish they chose one or the other. I wish they chose the baby blue. I don't know, for some reason, Ingrid pivoting to green is a little bit jarring, especially because, like I said earlier, in her default class designs that aren't custom, she wears blue. So it is a little bit odd to see her wearing blue for a big portion of the game, and then all of a sudden she's switched to teal. I think visually it looks nice, but I remembered my initial playing of the game. I thought she was a new character. I didn't recognize her post-time skip, especially because I wasn't spoiled for the character designs. Outside of the color palette, which I don't love, this design is gorgeous. I feel like if you asked someone to take Pegasus Knight references throughout the series, because those are quite unique, not really based in history. So if you take the classic Pegasus Knight and winterize it, this is exactly what I imagine it to look like. I think it's a little odd that she has a hood, just because I feel like if you're on the back of a flying vehicle, you might not get a lot of use out of that. It's probably going to be flying off, but she looks great. And again, decorative sword. She has spurs because she's on horseback. I love the riding boot here too. The restraint intelligent systems must have had to put a Pegasus Knight in pants. Crazy. I don't think I have a ton to say. I think it features Ingrid well as someone who wants to be a royal knight. Ashe's design is really interesting to me because it pulls from both the sniper and the bow knight class designs from Three Houses and Three Hopes, especially with the hooded capelet and the half skirt with like the battlement trim. The placard chest piece, the short boots as opposed to longer cuffed riding boots, and the lack of a large pauldron on his aiming shoulder are what make this feel more like a common soldier as opposed to like the Robin Hood style archer that the sniper and bow knight pull from. I feel like if you just look at this character design and have no context of who he is, he looks just like a soldier, which I think is perfect for Ashe, especially with the way that he's posed and holding the sword. Why does he have a sword? That's a really excellent question, because he's a bow designated character typically. But yeah, I think this design looks great. I don't love placard armor just because I think it lacks shape, but I like this design. It makes someone who is normally quite lithe and small seem quite big and strong. Also, just something I've noticed in general looking at concept art for Fire Emblem, they like to draw them a little thick. Like everyone's a little bit wide, and then you see the game and they all shrink a little bit, like someone did transform on Photoshop and made them a little bit skinnier. I like the capelet. Something I want to note is that with all the characters that we've seen who have capelets so far, they've all been affixed with a metal fixture. That I appreciate the fact that Ashe's cape is affixed with a little piece of rope. There's such a elevated commonness to this design that I love because he's the only commoner here. I don't necessarily love the mismatching of the details, like the zigzag of the shoulder piece and then this hexagonal trim on the capelet with the battlement trim around the waist. I don't love the mismatching details, but I'm choosing to read this as, like, even though Ashe is technically wealthy in the canon of this world because he was adopted into a noble house, I'm choosing to read the mismatched details as this person can't necessarily afford a custom armor set where everything matches, or maybe doesn't necessarily have the taste levels to make that happen for themselves, just adding another layer of commonness and lack of access. And then with the palette as well, every character we've seen so far has been wearing a variation of blue, but it's cut up with these neutral armor pieces and then mauve boots and gloves and leather pieces, and then these even more saturated straps. Mercedes's look is not winter ready. She looks quite different from everyone else in her house. I am choosing to attribute this to her fall from nobility and having spent some time in the Adrestian Empire before returning to the kingdom. So the fashion's a little bit different. I think her and Linhart share a little bit of design similarity, just in the fact that it's a really, really modern take on some classic references, but it's hard to pinpoint this to anything specific. I think she looks like this really old picture I found of a Parisian maid, just with the placement of the white around the neck, the ruffle down the front, the ruffled cuffs on the sleeve, and the fact that the white piece in the front looks literally like an apron fits in very well with modern traits of like a scholarly academic wizard. Just like the leather corseting, the fact that she's wearing no armor, the weight of this dress, the fact that she has these huge floating leather bands that are strapped in the front for a tassel effect, and then she has a tassel in the front, and then just a big lump of fabric creating a sash in the back. A very modern wizard from 2020, like this decade, but it's a gorgeous design. I also appreciate the neutral tones and how sometimes when you mix beige and white, it can look bad if they're too close, but the beige is dark enough that it really doesn't have that effect. I appreciate the crest of Lamine being incorporated into the lower portion of the skirt with the little embroidery detailing. And then the blue earrings, that's her blue. And that's the through line that makes her part of the house, LOL. Also, she's wearing pants as well. All the women in this house wear pants. In my previous video, I talked about Constance as a part of the Black Eagles. As a part of this one, I am including Yuri and Hapi. Character-wise, they are most affiliated with the kingdom, so I just feel like they work here. Their designs as well are particularly villainous when compared to everyone else. So with Yuri, obviously his design really pulls from the Trickster class. That class originates from Awakening, and they basically repeat it, not verbatim, but it's really quite close. Yuri's is a bit more of a loose take on the Trickster class. The Trickster design largely pulls from Jesters. The emphasis on triangular points throughout the design, one, contribute to this sort of villainous look, and two, pull from that Jester reference, especially around the neck. The classic Trickster has more of these sharp points going around, but with Yuri's, he has 3 around the neckline, and then his cape also points up, kind of like Dracula's almost, and then the sharp triangular coattails and the triangle cut-ins in the cape, I feel like all pull from that Jester place. Also the skin tight pantaloons and boots, especially because the boots curl up at the toe, also very Jester reminiscent. The fact that he's wearing a cape, the fact that he has slashed sleeves, and he's wearing almost a suit jacket with tailcoats. It's not exactly that. Those pull us out of Jester and towards nobility. The slashed sleeves come from like the 1400s, ended around 1550. And the whole point of it is to look expensive because you can be wearing clothes that are cut and they're only cut to show a more beautiful fabric underneath. Just to have a little peak of color. Signs of wealth. Also, something about the coattails take us to like a magician kind of place. It's quite modern too, just because they're quite structured, and the way that they go down looks very circus, kind of Barnum and Bailey's. I also appreciate that it's laced up in the back, because it literally doesn't have to be, but a little bit of emphasis on Yuri's queerness, I'm here for. I don't like, though, that they took away his eye makeup. I think that is erasure. Hapi's design, I was like, wow, this is really cool and villainous. And I was confused at first because it looks nothing like the Valkyrie design from Three Houses. And then I remembered that the Valkyries do not exist in Three Hopes. And then it made a lot more sense because she's based off of the Dark Knight class, which is that like draconic demon kind of element to it, especially with these like Stegosaurus, spiky shell kind of shoulder pieces. Really, really nice. No particular historical reference with this one. I tried looking into corsets that have front lacing, but that really was not a thing throughout history. Sometimes corsets would be affixed in the front such that you could take them off without having someone help you in the back. But usually if a corset had lacing up the front, it would also have lacing up the back. And the lacing in the front was just for aesthetic reasons. The back is how you got it on. I like it a lot. I appreciate the square neckline. I think the neckline looks good with the armor pieces. The tattered scarves are a nice detail. Impractical as they are, I do love the floor-length boot cover that goes over the shoe. Very nice, very trendy, very Y2K. The leather hip armor is everything to me. The way that the shape kind of emulates a rib cage, but also kind of looks like a monster wrapping its clawed hand around Hapi just looks so, so good. I feel like this plays really nicely into her affiliation with monsters and is a bit more fitting over her Valkyrie look. That is it for today. We talked about 10 designs, and I feel like we made a lot of progress. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Again, I don't remember if I said at the beginning, big thank you for 150 subscribers. It is now April. I am hoping to make partner this year, and we're not close, but the channel's doing quite well. So thank you everyone for your support. Let me know what you think of this video. I've now done 2 of the houses. Do you want me to do the golden deer? Do you want me to talk about Three Hopes? I actually haven't really done that on this channel, like pertaining to what I feel about the game. I am planning to finish it this year because I've only played 2 of the routes. I haven't done the golden deer yet. Let me know what you want to see next. Okay. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.